Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming to the 2023 State of the City Address. It is a new structure. Thank you for indulging our growing pains as we figure out a new way of handling this. And I just want to be clear, I've always enjoyed the old model of doing things. I've attended many of them, and they were beautiful events, but I just, when I kind of was structuring last year's speech, I thought to myself, you know, I'm your mayor, I work for you, I'm kind of reporting back on what I've done over the course of the last year, and also, by the way, you have to pay me to hear it. It didn't quite feel like the vibe that I was looking for, and so we're doing this in a new and different way, and I thank everyone for being a part of it. And I want to say a big thank you to Space and Union, who have been great partners. They've just been a joy to work with, and it's a joy to be here again in this capacity after spending a lot of time in that capacity in this venue. Before I start, I also just want to quickly acknowledge my family. Karen Steinbrook, my wife, is here. You live an entire life and make. It wasn't intended to be an applause line, but honestly, it was the right judgment for sure. But no, you spend an entire life making great decisions and make one mistake, and now she's been stuck with me for almost 17 years, and I am by a wide margin the luckiest person in the world. So thank you for being here. And our two children, Aria and Sparrow, thank you for joining as well. They know better than anybody how I am at the whole brevity thing. So we'll see. We'll see. I want to acknowledge City Council. I'd like to acknowledge our City Council. We have a number of members of City Council here with us. I saw Councilmember Chrissy Harris, which I'll give her a hand. Oh, there's Chrissy. I saw Councilmember Jonathan Nusma. I saw Councilmember Eleanor Revelle. I saw Councilmember Juan Heracaris. And I saw City Clerk Mendoza. Did I miss any elected officials in the room? Okay. I just want to thank the elected officials who are here and those who weren't able to make it today. It's really a joy to work with y'all. We agree sometimes, we disagree other times. We're working together to make our community better. I learn from all of you. And we learn together and make each other better. So thank you very, very much for your dedication to public service.
Thank you.
I want to acknowledge one other person in the room. The relatively new president of Northwestern University, Mike Schill, is here. Mike is really kind of a Renaissance man. Legal scholar, an expert in affordable housing. Gosh, I don't know, could that come in handy around here? He was president of the University of Oregon, one of the most elite roles in all of academia. And he came here to Evanston to take what I think is the world's most prestigious job in the field of concrete procurement and concert promotion. In all seriousness, it's been a real joy to get to know you, to see your dedication to the community, your commitment to our collaboration as the only way that our city can thrive and the university can thrive. And I look forward to finding more and more creative ways to instantiate that collaboration. Okay, here's my report. It's been a great year in the city of Evanston. We are really, really fortunate, and a lot of good things have happened. And the first thing I want to name is the appointment of our city manager, Luke Stowe, which occurred. I would ask you all to hold your applause for Luke for a while, because if you clap every time I say something nice about Luke, we're not going to get out of here on time. But Luke was made city manager at the end of last summer, at the conclusion of a period of turmoil that actually, if you think about it, went on a long time. There was a long period of time, not only that we had interim city managers, but before that we had a mayor who wasn't running for re-election. Before that we had a different interim city manager. Before that we had a city manager who was looking for jobs elsewhere. It's been a long time since we've had a steady hand leading our staff in the execution of this community's values. And the difference, now that we have that, in the person of someone who is really very compassionate, very open, very inclusive in the way that he approaches his work and the people around him, it's made an enormous difference, and you feel it every single day. I think it is fair to say that there was a time when the city of Evanston, the capital C city government, felt like a place where people weren't sure if they were safe coming forward if something was wrong, if they hadn't been treated properly, if there was injustice occurring. And I don't think that's true anymore because of the approach that Luke takes. Not only the fact that he's a nice guy to be around, but the fact that when concerns are brought to him, he takes them seriously, he addresses them, he brings in a group of people collaboratively to make sure we're working on it in a way that incorporates all voices, and then he acts. We're lucky to have Luke. Thank you for the work you do. Now would you all give Luke Stowe a big hand, please? There's been a number of really exciting developments in personnel at the city of Evanston that have really enabled us to begin to take off in our achievement regarding our most significant promises. And two of them that I want to name are the two members of our city council who were working hard and doing great work, but had not yet been chosen by their own constituents. Instead, they'd just been chosen by some guy. They were elected in April. They were elected with large mandates because their residents saw the work they'd done, saw their commitment to public service, saw their commitment to bringing people together to actually solve problems and move our city forward. Congratulations, Chrissy Harris and Juan Heracares, on the confidence that your constituents have shown you. They won their elections, I think, because of the work they did and the dedication they showed. But I also want to mention that I was also supportive of their campaigns. And I mention that because it was a little bit controversial. And there were some concerns raised about what it might mean for a mayor to be involved in campaigns like that. And I don't think it's really, we're spending a lot of time on, is it appropriate for someone to endorse a candidate for public office? I think that's straightforward. But what I do want to say, because I think this is important, is that I feel like stating my position on important questions in our community when I think that there's a lot at stake is not just something I can do, I think it's something I should do. I think that it's important for me, and it's really part of the contract that I entered into with the community as someone who asked to be a leader for the community, to weigh in, to share my thoughts, not to expect everyone to agree, not expect people to take direction from me. This is Evanston, after all. But to make sure that when something seems significant, when the stakes seem high, I can explain why I believe that is, and not to withhold that information from people when they're making an important choice. And so that's the approach I've taken in the last 2 years. It's the approach that I'll continue taking. And I know that is something that some people love and some people love less. But I wouldn't feel like I was doing my job if I didn't follow through on that commitment. So I want to say a little bit more about some personnel changes. We have a new director of our community development department. Sarah Flax is here. Would you give Sarah a big hand, please? Our community development department is an overworked and understaffed group of heroes. And we have now in place the team that enables us to really start running aggressively on key, difficult, important issues that are essential to instantiate the values of this community. One of those things happened last night at City Council when a vote was taken to approve the permanent usage of the Margarita Inn by Connections for the Homeless as a shelter for unhoused individuals. This is something that is really, really meaningful if we are going to make good on our commitments regarding affordable housing, if we are going to make good on our commitments regarding social justice, economic justice, and equity, and something that was difficult. Something that was difficult in a variety of ways. It was technically difficult, it was emotionally complex, it was politically difficult, but it was the right thing to do. And I want to thank our city council for doing the right thing on this important issue, and the kind of thing that a lot of elected officials are scared to do, but Evanston elected officials stood up and proudly did the right thing, and they wouldn't have been able to do it without remarkable support from our community development department, who really were just quietly making the whole thing possible. Not by making the decision, that was the elected official's job, but by providing the information and doing the technical work to make the decision possible. So thank you for that. The bad news is your work has just begun. 2 years ago, a whole bunch of new council members and a mayor were elected on a promise of really tackling affordable housing and rethinking our zoning in this community, because that is an impediment to having the kind of affordable housing we need. And now we have the team in place ready to do that work, led by Sarah. I know I'm going to say a whole series of words that are actually, biologists have studied this. These are words that are actually certain to put people to literal sleep. But here we go. We are going to enter into a comprehensive planning process in the city of Evanston to enable ourselves to do bold and transformational changes in our zoning code. Okay, I said it. If your alarm clocks were set, they should go off now. But dude, that set of actions is going to be very important, critical for us in our efforts to achieve our affordable housing goals. And let me be direct with you, it'll be difficult, it'll be controversial, there'll be another large number of people with genuine and legitimate emotional concerns at City Hall making public comment, and we are going to have to work through that to do the bold, difficult things that our community requires. And I am confident that with this City Council and this team in place in our Community Development Department, we will get it done. Thank you, Sarah. I want to name another personnel change that's occurred in our city organization. I'm not sure if she's here, but Audrey Thompson, who probably has 47 other things that stop her from even being here, is our new Parks and Rec director. Not new like last week, but new as since the last time I gave a State of the City address. And man, has she been transforming things in our Parks and Recreation department. It has really, really made an enormous difference, cleaning up processes, transforming the way things are done to make the entire department open and inclusive and really a resource for the community, not a set of hurdles that folks need to clear. And she took on that role in the midst of a transformation that was occurring owing to a profoundly shameful episode in this city's history, which was a series of blood-curdling, credible and in many cases substantiated allegations about sexual misconduct among our lakefront employees. The entire organization has had to need to do a lot to right the ship in that respect, but much of that work has been led by Audrey Thompson and the Parks and Recreation Department. And it's been transformational. By the way, this summer, when y'all go to the beach, the lifeguards are not going to be under the direction of the Parks and Recreation Department because they're doing life safety work, not recreation work. They're going to be under the direction of our extraordinary fire department. We're finally getting it right. We're finally handling this issue in the correct way. And we're doing it with partnership and collaboration between a large number of people, a large number of leaders, including, again, Director Thompson and Fire Chief Paul Polyp, who are figuring out a way to ensure First of all, a professional environment where everyone is safe and respected and treated with the dignity that every human being deserves. By the way, that includes our employees and our guests at the lakefront. To ensure safety and to ensure fun. These are not contradictory priorities, but they are priorities that are not the same. And being clear about how to separate out who's responsible for what has been a critical part of making sure that we get it right. By the way, I want to make another personnel announcement, kind of in the style of stereotypical 4-year-old boy. We also have a new vehicle in our fire department. We have been talking since, I think, before I lived in Evanston, and I lived here since 2006. Which, if you want to run against me next time, that's a good platform item. We've been talking since, I think, before I moved to Evanston about the need for a third ambulance. How the call volume more than warrants it, how a comparison with our neighbors more than warrants it, how just the need to ensure that we're providing the life safety services that really residents rely on warrants it. And we haven't done it until this year. We finally put that in place. Yes, it costs some money, but it's the right thing to do, and I'm proud that we've done it this year, and that we have a fire department that's professional and skilled and well-run to make sure they can absorb that additional equipment and responsibility in a way that will, in fact, keep our residents safer. I'm sorry that I feel that I sound a little bit like an HR director over here, but I want to continue talking about some additions to our team. We lost our sustainability and resilience coordinator because we turned her into our sustainability and resilience manager, managing a division of people now. Kara Pratt used to be a one-woman band trying to implement this city's enormously ambitious and frankly morally required sustainability goals. She did remarkable work, but one person simply wasn't enough. So we've expanded Kara's team. She's been joined by Ben Martin and Kirsten Dreboel. Would Ben, Kirsten, and Kara just stand and be recognized, not only so that we can thank you, but also so that we can see you, because this whole community is going to need to help you and partner with you if we're going to achieve our climate goals. We've done a lot. We've done a lot. Our city's electric vehicle fleet went from 1 vehicle to 12 in the last year. By the way, when Kara goes to national conferences and hangs out with other sustainability directors and people like that in other cities, what her colleagues are all doing is complaining about, public works won't change, the fleet people won't be innovative, we can't get our people to understand that you can make a transition to electric vehicles, that you can make transition to all electric buildings. But we have a team here that works together, that collaborates, that pulls together in support of a shared objective. And so you couldn't have achieved that shift of electrifying our fleet with just the sustainability folks alone. It's done in partnership with our administrative services department. Mike Rivera is here, and our fleet and facilities, Sean Cholik is here. This is really a team effort full of innovative people who understand that if we want to achieve our mission, we have to change. It's why we're building an all-electric animal shelter. Last night, City Council did another important thing on sustainability, implementing a plastic bag ban. The first one, we believe, in the state of Illinois, but it's being done in places across the country because it's important, it's necessary. And it was done slowly because we wanted to get input from a variety of stakeholders, and we did do that. And we evolved over time with the technicalities of the program to make sure it would actually work, but now it will work and it will be critical in enabling us to achieve our goals. But we are not done. We've got big agenda items this year. Improving our building codes, phasing away from natural gas in new construction. These are critical things that, again, they're not going to be easy. They're not going to be uncontroversial necessarily, but they're important if we believe in our climate objectives. I want to give a shout out to our Health and Human Services Department. Just recently, the state COVID emergency declaration came to an end. Obviously, I see people here in masks. Obviously, COVID is not gone, but we are in many respects returning to a kind of normal. And I just want to name the fact that under the previous administration and under the leadership in the Department of Health and Human Services of Ike Ogbo, we did remarkable things. This was a horrifying incident. We lost loved ones. We lost time. We lost health. But because of what this community did in pulling together and because of what our Health and Human Services Department was able to do, there are a lot of people alive today who would not otherwise be. So I want to thank them as we come out of this utterly grueling, exhausting 3 years for what they have done. And they haven't just done that. They haven't just done that. They've stood up this year a guaranteed income pilot program. It's a really remarkable thing. It's an exciting program. There's 150 households in Evanston today who are getting a monthly $500 payment that they can use to no longer have to choose between food and medicine or medicine and rent. It is part of a movement that's sweeping the nation, and we are proud, as usual, here in Evanston to be at the forefront of this movement. And I want to name that we wouldn't be doing this if not for the partnership with Northwestern University. The city is putting in plenty of support, but Northwestern started it. And Northwestern researchers are studying it as well. So this kind of partnership where we do work that advances our shared values is really, I think, the most important part of our potential relationship. I also want to call out the Department of Health and Human Services and Councilmember Hadakadis in particular. When the Dobbs decision was handed down, we didn't just feel sad about it, even though we're not the Supreme Court, we're not a legislative body. We acted. Juan made sure we passed a resolution immediately to ensure that the city of Evanston would do all that it can to preserve reproductive freedom for our residents, for our visitors, and for our employees. And our health department and our police department and others have come together to make sure we're getting that done. Again, we're not naive. We're not confused about whether these decisions are fundamentally in our hands, but just because most of the authority lies somewhere else does not let us off the hook. We're not going to abdicate our responsibility to do what we can, and we're doing what we can, and we will continue to do that. You probably saw on the way in, we had some people from our participatory budgeting effort here. We're trying another innovative thing, putting millions of federal dollars in the hands of the people to directly decide how to spend, to directly set priorities. We understand that not everybody feels heard by our government. And so we're near to launching a program wherein the people literally, through direct democracy, will have the ability to set spending priorities of a serious amount of money. It's an exciting and meaningful pilot program. I, for one, can't wait to see how it turns out. And I think it's a real reflection of how much is happening that here we are talking about innovative stuff in the city of Evanston. I've been talking for, Aria, don't give me any numbers, but probably like 6 years, I don't know. And I haven't even said the word reparations yet. Well, not only is our reparations program up and running and growing, but our city council did a whole bunch of important things to improve and strengthen it. First, they found new revenue because the initial structure of the reparations program was supposed to be reliant exclusively on cannabis sales tax revenue, and we were just much worse at selling drugs than we thought we were going to be here in Evanston. And so we had to find other revenue streams, but they did. Real estate transfer tax revenue is going to be put into the reparations fund and is going to really transform our ability to make those moral commitments that we must make. And then more recently, City Council has passed a motion setting in place a path to cash reparations, which has been a point of challenge throughout this program, but after a lot of discussion on a programmatic basis, on a legal basis, on a tax basis, and on a values basis, the council came to the conclusion that that was an important piece of the effort, and that is moving forward as well. So, we have a lot of ideas in the hopper, we have a lot of projects in the hopper, we have a lot going on, and a lot to be proud of. There's also, I think, it's also worth just asking kind of what is the basic economic condition of our city. Well, first of all, financially, we are in a remarkably strong position with significant surpluses that we've run in recent years, and with the significant reserve available right now. That's not all good news. Some of that's because we were unable to fill the positions that we had budgeted for. Some of that's great news because of the economic growth and the revenues coming in higher than anticipated. We have economic challenges ahead, as we always have. Our pensions remain inadequately funded. We have growing personnel costs, of course, as is necessary, practically but also morally, I would argue, in a time of inflation like this. But we've put ourselves in a financial position where I think we'll be able to weather those challenges. And it's not just the kind of fiscal position of the city that one needs to ask about, it's also the economic condition. We've seen a lot of important recovery signs in our downtown. I cannot tell you how much of my first year plus as mayor was spent fielding questions about the precise date of the reopening of the movie theater downtown. The movie theater is open. There are exciting new restaurants open downtown. Northlight continues to make progress, and we continue to believe that the opening of Northlight will be a cultural and social and, frankly, economic engine for the city. There is a lot of good happening here. But we're not there yet. And I want to be really specific about something. I sent an email out to the community a few months ago where I mentioned, in the context of talking about our economic recovery, that we're different than Wilmette. And that comment was a real Rorschach test. Some people read it as a shot at Wilmette, and some people read it as a kind of abdication of ambition. And I regret to inform you all that it was neither of those things. We're not better, we're not worse, we're just different. And Evanston's success will necessarily be different than Wilmette's success. And specifically, the Wilmette economic model pre-pandemic was really sitting on a one-legged stool of demand from their residents. The Evanston economic model was sitting on a three-legged stool: residents, the university, and the downtown office population. And the university took some time to come back, but is more and more and more back, and academic travel is beginning to return, although I think not to the pre-pandemic levels. And frankly, the office situation just is not what it was in February of 2020, and I don't think anybody still now can tell you what a long-term post-COVID remote work equilibrium is going to look like, but what I do think we can all say with real confidence is it's not going to just be what it was before. And that means that economic success for a place that used to be in part reliant on a particular number of office workers is going to be reliant on something else. We had a very, very in-depth, detailed report commissioned. It's called the Evanston Thrives Report. And it really digs into this question of how to build a post-pandemic thriving economy. And it relies on other ingredients. It relies on people wanting to be downtown. It relies on events being downtown. It relies on residential headcount downtown. It relies on all of these different things that are going to take time to completely put in place, but that give us the opportunity to have a new version of even more vibrant downtown than we've seen before. And I do believe we are on the path to that. I want to call out our economic development manager, Paul Zelmazek, who's been leading that effort and really is a visionary in making sure that we don't get distracted by what somebody else is or isn't or what we used to be, but instead focus on what we can and need to become. I want to name one last member of our team who I've, I want to name one more member of our team who I've saved for almost last. That's our police chief, Shanita Stewart. Now, I want y'all to do me a favor. You can't talk about how good she is, because if the word gets out, she's going to be running the New York Police Department or the FBI or something. We are so fortunate to have Police Chief Shanita Stewart. It has been an extraordinary privilege and a real education for me to work with her. First of all, we have in place a police chief who understands that there is not a contradiction between supporting your team and loving police work and being for reform. In fact, there is no version of reform that succeeds if it's not implemented by someone who genuinely supports and loves her team and believes in good police work. And so we have a healthy and effective partnership where I learn from her. I hope maybe she sometimes learns from me. And we are moving forward. For example, the Reimagining Public Safety Committee, quite some time ago now, made the recognition that the racial disparities among our equipment-related traffic stops were really, really extreme. There's a million reasons why that might be the case, and the truth is we don't know why it's the case. I think a lot of people hear that and jump to accusatory conclusions, which I think is absolutely the wrong conclusion to draw. But nonetheless, it's a fact. And so our first thought was, listen, typically if you do a traffic stop because someone's got, let's say, a broken taillight, you pull them over. You don't impound their car because the car is unsafe to drive. You pull them over and you say, fix it, and then put them back on the road again, which must mean that it's not such an urgent safety concern that you needed to pull them over in the first place. Instead, what if you would, using a technology solution, take a picture of the violation and send a notice in the mail directing them to get it addressed, and then say, if we spot this X more times, then you'll get a ticket in the mail. Well, I don't know how many of you have spent time dealing with vendors that address technology and police issues, but I'm sorry for those of you who have. It's not a fun world, and that was ultimately a dead end. And so the question then became, what could we do? And in discussions with Chief Stewart, with members of her team, like Sergeant Scott Safier, I always want to make him French, but he's not. He's from Skokie. Scott Safier, we've figured out that we're a humble organization. We can't invent a new technology solution, but what we can do is say, here is a list of equipment violations that actually are not needed to keep the community safe. Enforcing these does not make us safer, and we can put those at the back of the line so they're not a primary reason for a stop. This is a collaborative solution to make our policing more racially equitable, more just, and free up our officers' time to work on the issues that are in fact necessary to keep our community safe. This is the kind of collaboration that is possible when we have a police chief like this, and it makes everyone in our city safer and makes our operations of policing far, far more equitable. But my favorite thing about Chief Stewart is we meet once a week, and for the first 15 of those meetings, I think, at every meeting, she would say to me, hey, I want you to know about this member, this employee in the police department, who you may not have met before, who I've been working with on this issue and is doing amazing work. Because what she understands, like any truly great leader does, is that a great leader identifies talent, supports great people, and lifts them up and makes them, by respecting them and appreciating them and giving them the latitude to be their best selves, makes them so much better. And by the way, that makes everybody in the department happier because they feel valued, because they are valued. And that's why, after a long slide, we've seen our hiring pick up in the police department, because people understand that they're here to fulfill a mission, and they're going to be valued by leadership in doing it. As long as you promise not to tell anybody else how great she is, would you all give Chief Sunita Stewart one more big hand, please? I do believe that the extraordinary work in our Evanston Police Department is visible in our crime data, which is getting better, but that doesn't mean that everything's perfect. We lost somebody just a few weeks ago. As many of you know, there was a homicide that occurred on the lakefront. A young man who many people in this community know well, is gone. His brothers were hurt. It's a horrifying nightmare for that family, for everyone in that orbit, and I would argue for every single human being in this community. And these tragedies have become repeated so often that there is sometimes an instinct that even if we feel it with the depths of our soul, there's still nothing we can really do to change it. That's not true. That's not true, and we cannot fall victim to that kind of thinking. So I want to thank our team for doing what they can. Not only our police department, our Parks and Recreation department, our youth outreach team under the direction of Audrey Thompson, Jeremy McCrae and his team have done remarkable work for years, reaching out, supporting people, mentoring, trying to help people who are in a dangerous situation get on a better and safer and healthier path. That's critical, critical work. But it's obviously just not enough. I'm glad that last night the City Council approved one more position in our youth outreach team. That was necessary. That was important. I think as much progress as there's been, we'd be fools not to understand that there's a long summer coming ahead, and we have to do everything we can to wrap everyone in this community in love and keep everyone safe. We've not only expanded our youth outreach team, we've expanded our workforce development team. We understand that there's what happens at the moment of a shooting, and we have to do everything we can to stop that, but there's also the social determinants that include economic despair. And we believe that our workforce development team, which is growing and doing great work under Nathan Norman, is an important part of changing the trajectory of violence in this community. I'm glad that Chief Stewart has restored our community policing effort. Again, this is a collaborative effort. And if any one organization, whether it's a police department or a city or any of our extraordinary nonprofit partners in violence prevention, thinks they can do it alone, we will fail. We have to all be doing this together as a community. And finally, much like I mentioned on the issue of reproductive freedom, we're not naive. We don't think that the city of Evanston alone controls gun policy. We know about the U.S. Supreme Court and the U.S. Congress and all the restrictions imposed on us and what porous borders mean, but that does not mean we shouldn't do anything. In fact, that means we got to do everything we can, and we need to lean in to finding practical constitutional approaches on this issue. This morning I made a referral to enact a gun safety storage ordinance, building on what Cook County already has, but much stronger, borrowing from some of the strongest ordinances that exist in Massachusetts and Oregon and other places like New York. I believe we have a good chance of passing an ordinance like this, and I think it will be another tool in our effort to combat the scourge of gun violence. And I want to thank some people who've been really instrumental in making that work possible. First of all, the Giffords Law Center has been a great assistant to our team as we've tried to figure out the best way forward. Our law department, led by Nick Cummings and with the extraordinary support of Alex Ruggie, has done a ton of tremendous work on this. But I also want to call out Mercedes Flowers. She's a graduate student at Kellogg. She's an intern in my office, which means she is my office, plus me. She has been really driving our ability to learn enough about this issue to be in a position today, May 23rd, that we can propose a strong ordinance, I think a best-in-class ordinance that will do everything possible to keep our community safe. And I say that not only because Mercedes is amazing, though that's also a fact. I say it because it's another example of the kind of partnership that I want to see more of. It didn't cost Northwestern a dime for us to work together. It didn't cost the city a dime. But listen, buddy, no offense, but I think she got an educational experience that y'all couldn't have provided without a city to implement the fruits of her thinking. And we got extraordinary assistance that I think we couldn't have gotten anywhere else either. So more of this, please. Oh, by the way, I want to also call out Yusuto Shah, who's with us today as well. He's our subsequent term's Kellogg intern, so stay tuned. There's more to come out of Usuto as well. So thank you to both of you for your extraordinary work. And I think it's just an indication of how many resources exist in this community if only we are as successful as we could be in working together. Finally, in mentioning our effort to pass an ordinance, I just want to say a thank you to one more member of our team, our policy coordinator, Allison Leipziger. I think it's fair to say that when we took the oath of office in May of 2021, the legislative process in the City Council of Evanston was a little chaotic. And I think for those of you who make the extremely questionable lifestyle choice of watching all city council meetings, you'd probably agree that things have really improved. They're not works of art. We're not going to put them on in the Northlight when the Northlight comes home to Evanston. But from a standpoint of focusing on the stuff that matters and having collaborative discussions about the things that we really need to tackle to address the biggest problems, I think we've gotten much better. And having a policy coordinator to shepherd that process has been transformational. Thank you, Allison Leipziger, for your work. So I want to end here. I've been mayor for 2 years. It sort of changed my life. It's changed the way people talk to me. You know, it used to be that I would run into somebody in the street and they'd say, "Hey, Daniel, how are you?" And now they say, "How are you?" You know, with real, "I'm so sorry about your uncle's cancer diagnosis" energy. And look, I'm great. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I love this job and I'm lucky to have it. But I'm not going to lie and say that it's never lonely. And it feels lonely sometimes because sometimes I feel like I'm just surrounded by anger, surrounded by combat. And I feel like I've spent all of this time, these 2 years, trying to bring people together and turn down the temperature in an environment that doesn't always feel like it wants the temperature turned down. Living in a polarized moment. And I want to be clear about this. I'm a progressive Democrat. I'm not a kumbaya guy. I don't require unanimity. If you think this and I think this, I don't think that means that the right solution is necessary for us to sit down and meet in the middle. And by the way, as somebody who has 2 children who the Republican Party is literally trying to criminalize, I understand that sometimes polarization is the morally necessary way forward. But I also know the polarization, when it's necessary, is necessary in service of an outcome, not as a culture. And what I'm here to tell you is that the polarization that we're experiencing in the city of Evanston is not an Evanston problem, and it's not a government problem. The difficulty having productive discussions to resolve difficult situations is endemic right now. And if you don't know that, it means you're not a teacher. And ask your friends who are in the classroom, or ask your friends who wait tables, or ask your friends who are flight attendants. And I'm not saying everyone's terrible at all, but I'm saying there is a default to combat and a difficulty in resolving difficult situations productively that is spreading in our society. And so the question then presents itself of why is that? And one explanation you hear a lot is the previous president, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. And one explanation that obviously holds a tremendous amount of water is the pandemic and what it did to people. But there's another explanation that I think is really, really critical, and it's this. I'm talking about screens in general, smartphones in particular, and social media apps in quadruple particular. If you think about what Mark Zuckerberg's profit motive is, it is to keep your eyeballs on his screen. That's all he wants. He's not selling anything that you're buying. He's selling your eyeballs. And he wants as much of them as possible. And the way to keep them is to make you afraid, and to make you angry, and to make you envious. And so what we now have is these incredible technologies that are good mostly at putting us in little bubbles with other people who are angry and afraid and envious about the same things that we are. And when presented with this fact, I can't help but ask the question of, why are we even here? And I know the question of what is the purpose of life feels a little cringy, right? It feels like it's for, anxious 12-year-olds who can't fall asleep, right? Or for college sophomores who just took their first philosophy class. But I actually think it's a question that we all benefit from asking ourselves. And the answer that I come to after the sort of high-minded stuff about creating beautiful things and solving difficult problems and art and beauty and innovation and making the world a better place, all of those sophisticated things, when you boil them down, they come, in my mind, to a very simple thing, which is we're here to be together, to be with each other, to do what we love with people we love who love doing those same things. And when we do a lot of that, we're healthier. We're mentally healthier. We're physically healthier. We're more emotionally balanced, and we're more resilient to difficulties that come our way. And so in light of that, it is just extraordinary to acknowledge that the most remarkable assemblage of technological talent in the history of humanity by far is currently working single-mindedly on the problem of how to stop us from engaging in the whole purpose of being alive in the first place. That is messed up. That is perverse. And it's not surprising to me that it's impaired our mental health, it's impaired our social cohesion, and it's impaired our difficulty to relate productively to each other, particularly when we do not agree. Now, I am most assuredly an old man, and I am most assuredly yelling at a cloud. But I don't want you to think that I'm just an old man yelling at a cloud. This is not only about new technology. This is a trend that was, frankly, had a lot to do with television. It was a trend that had a lot to do with creating the nuclear family as a residential unit. I know it sounds crazy from the vantage point of 2023, but the idea that the people who live in a house together are just parents and their kids is actually pretty darn new and pretty darn isolating, particularly in a suburban environment where the house is detached from other houses on a large lot, and you leave it and go into it by going through a car through a garage that's attached. That's isolating. That's isolating. And by the way, these phenomena are also exacerbating by the work meat grinder we're in right now that says that highly educated elite workers are in some kind of performative, make sure you work more hours than everybody else culture, and low-wage workers are just in a situation of having to work more and more hours, more and more jobs with less and less predictability, less and less sleep, less and less physical health, and less mental health, just to figure out how to pay the rent, how to afford medicine, how to have a hope of getting an education. And so there are a lot of different phenomena coming together, all moving in the direction of isolation, loneliness, atomization, and social dissolution. By the way, we did two things last night at City Council that are really important from this point of view. The single best antidote to a built neighborhood that separates people is a neighborhood school that people walk to together, builds community, connects neighbors, builds social capital. Last night we voted to support District 65's application to build a school in the Fifth Ward, righting a half-century of wrong, and wrong that broke up communities and exacerbated this very problem. And we passed, not without some controversy, but I'm damn proud of it, we passed a Fair Workweek ordinance last night because I believe that a worker not only has the right to a living wage, they also have the right to a life that gives them the capability to invest time in their family, to invest time in their friends, to invest time in their relationships, and build healthy balance that strengthens communities. And so you might have wondered for a minute, like if you'd wandered into not a State of the City address, but a lecture on doomer sociology. But in my view, it's all connected. In fact, I wouldn't have run for mayor if I didn't believe that the role of municipal government was critical in helping us build the kind of society and the kind of relationships that we need. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, whether it comes to zoning, whether it comes to events, whether it comes to our labor policies. We're doing what we're doing to build a community where people can be together. And that's where I want to end, by saying that as long as I am mayor, the city of Evanston will do whatever it can to facilitate our being together. Yes, our living together, but our working together, our learning together, our playing together, our eating together, our arguing productively together, our solving problems together, our helping each other and lifting each other up together so that we can build collectively the society where everybody has the nurturing human relationships that we all need to thrive. And I know that I have all of you as teammates in that effort, and for that, more than anything else, I say thank you very much.